When you didn't have a date, for example, that makes it hard to sort of make your plans. And I think there's still a lot of imponderables. And for us, perhaps more so, and that's why I've sort of tried to get some of the others involved in the decision making to be considerate of the needs of cities. So, for example, when it comes to the question of the existing dispensaries that are all out there, all of which are contrary to the current and the future law, you know, what plan do you make to deal with them? And the plans are all going to be made by us, because at the end of the day, we are responsible in cities across Canada for policing, including in Toronto. So I think there's a host of things like that. I mean, in Toronto, they've named, I think, the location of 2 stores, and that even those 2 created some controversy. Our bottom line is really very simple, which is that we just want to make sure that neighborhoods and families, and especially kids, are sort of protected against anything that could go wrong. We want to make sure the public health isn't damaged, and we want to make sure that we're not left holding the bag financially. So, you know, we're making plans, but we're not able to be ready, in the sense that we didn't even know until, you know, recently what the date was.
Why are those little pop-up pot stores still open? Why not have your police force shut them down?
Well, we've made an effort to the point where although I don't direct the police, they've criticized me because I've said they should be shut down just because they're against the law. And the police have been heavily criticized for the fact we have been closing them. But as fast as we've been closing them, they either reopen or new ones open. So we went from kind of a low of 25 in Toronto's case to a high of way over 100 to about, I think, probably 60 today. But it's just one of those things where as fast as you go and try and close them, they reopen. And so that's why they're there. And that will become a problem, because my sense is those people aren't planning to just meekly close up and go away on October the 17th or whatever it is. I think they plan on trying to stay around.
Are you worried about managing those who are under the influence, whether that's in cars or even on the city streets, increased crime?
Well, it's back to your question again, are we ready? Because I don't know that we all know what to expect. And there are a series of questions. You know, what about our own employees, just the work for civic governments, trucks and whatnot? What about other people that are just in the streets and in the parks and places like that? What about driving? It's our police service, again, that enforces that law that presently applies to impaired driving, and there's a new law now. So when you say, are we ready? Well, you couldn't possibly have been ready, for example, to deal with a new law on impaired driving and what impairment means before the law was passed. So it's one of those things where there's a lot to do between now and October, and that's what worries you sometimes when you're in a very, very confined period of time trying to get a lot done that is actually not simple. You have to be worried about that.
One thing you've been pretty clear on is that you don't want to bear unexpected expenses related to this without some kind of compensation. What does that look like, and where are the conversations around that?
Well, in our case, we actually tried to do a calculation, and it was hard to do it precisely, but we came up with, tens of millions of dollars that the City of Toronto, through its police service and other departments, would be forced to expend. And we simply took the case without being opposed to the change in the law. We weren't opposed to it. But we simply said, when you're going to change the law at some other level of government, in this case federally, then you should be prepared to help us with the money. And indeed, the arrangements that have been put in place, which is that there's a tax to be collected to be shared with the provinces who've said they'd share with us, that's all fine, except that you have to count on that cascading flow of money to actually reach us to compensate us for the fact we will be put to additional policing expenses and this kind of thing. So I'm counting on good faith, which can sometimes be a mistake, but I'm counting on good faith to actually make sure that municipal property taxpayers are left whole in this whole exercise, and we'll see.
Optically, what does this do for the City of Toronto? On the global way, we're now the first country to have a national legalized recreational marijuana. Is that good or bad?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's all bad. I remember when I went to Amsterdam as a teenager, which is ancient history, but, it was seen to be a very cool thing to go there. This was like, 50 years ago. Very cool to go there. And so I can't imagine it'll hurt in particular. There are other questions that arise about, will it hurt, for example, with regard to crossing the U.S. border because of, particular concerns they have. I don't think it'll hurt the image of the city, because I think right now the fact is Toronto and other Canadian cities are seen as livable, embracing, and therefore pretty cool. And as a result, this will probably add to that. I can't imagine it's really going to detract, except in the eyes of a bunch of people who probably wouldn't come here anyway. Including
for businesses, because you are hard at work getting businesses to move here. U.S. businesses, will they think twice because there's this confusion around?
I don't think so. You know what I think they'll conclude, and this is just me saying what I would think if I was a business person, which is, look, anybody who's going to smoke marijuana is already smoking it, and they're just getting it somewhere else. So if it's now legalized, you've probably done something sensible in terms of relieving the burden on your police and your courts, and it's not going to lead to a whole bunch more people smoking marijuana who might be coming to work stoned. So I don't think it's going to impact on that at all. I think we're out there trying to get the best and the brightest to come to Canada, and we have many other calling cards that are on people's minds more so than our marijuana laws.
What is the thing that worries you the most about it on this whole issue?
To me, it's things like the driving and the impairment on the job and how you're going to sort of deal with that. And then it's also the rule of law, because I just have this feeling I articulated earlier that there are going to be people who are making a lot of money right now. I suspect there wouldn't be all these stores if they weren't making money, who are going to say, well, we're sticking around. We're not going away. And this whole system won't work properly if everybody and his uncle can set up a marijuana shop on a street corner and sell it. It won't work in terms of, access and the things I'm worried about protecting, which are safety, the safety of kids and families, the sanctity of business. There were a lot of businesses who complained to us about those pop-up stores because, if you're running a women's clothing store or a toy store, you don't want to be next to a marijuana store. So that's probably my biggest worry.
I know you've talked about this before, but we have the U.S. president making new musings today about auto tariffs on European autos. What kind of a concern is it for you, given the importance of autos in this city, if he gets serious about tariffs on that sector?
Well, it's huge. And I made the point the other day when I was speaking to a business audience where they might think, well, we don't have a lot of auto businesses here. We actually do in the parts business. And then we have their other suppliers, their banks, their lawyers, their accountants, and all that. And so what we're doing in Toronto, just to try to sort of show some leadership on this, is we're preparing letters to the other cities, for example, in the United States, we do a lot of business with. The mayors of Dallas and Fort Worth came to Toronto with 80 business people, and I sort of said to them, why are you here? And they said, because we analyzed all of our trading relationships in North America, and the single biggest trading relationship we had as two cities with any other city in North America was with Toronto. And I don't think a lot of American mayors, for example, so I can write to those mayors who I know and say, hey, we need your help here. This is helping nobody. This is a destructive kind of behavior. And I'm going to do the same with American companies here, and we're in the midst of pulling together those who have the biggest investments here now and trying to call them in. And I realize a lot of them are probably going to be sympathetic, but at least I can talk to them. But it's a big concern. I mean, anybody in Canada who thinks, this stuff is not going to affect me because I live in Saskatchewan and there's no auto plants here is really mistaken. It's a big part of our collective economy, and that's why we all have to be worried about it.